Hello and welcome to the Franchise Territory Mapping Summit. My name is Lawrence. I'm the head of marketing here at MangoMap, and we are the leading franchise sales and territory mapping platform, helping franchise brands all across the globe create and sell more franchise territories, normally within 90 days of deployment. I'm joined again today by Paul Gager, our resident mapping expert. How are you doing today, Paul?
I'm very well, thanks, Lawrence.
We've discussed things like territory strategy, and we've discussed the different types of data, such as boundary data, demographic data about people who live in a certain area. And we've talked about points of interest and all of these different types of data that you can use if you switch to a territory mapping strategy for your franchise. So this talk that we're going to be having today, we're actually going to be doing a live demo of this, of how it all comes together and of how you actually combine, say, demographic data with boundary data, with points of interest, and put it all together in a cohesive package according to an overall strategy. So I believe you're going to share your screen and show everyone how this works, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, Lawrence. And so really the purpose of today's video is just to give a visual perspective of what we've been talking about. So rather than just concepts, let's have a look at what boundaries look like on a map. Let's have a look at a demographic profile. Let's think about points of interest, competitor locations, and start to think about how we might strategize around a territory mapping solution for a city.
Cool.
So what you can see on your screen there is a base map of the Sydney area. You can see place names, rivers, the sea. The areas in grey are low population areas, so we're really going to be focused on the city itself and looking at the demographics of that city. So let's just zoom in a little bit, and you can see we get more detail as we zoom in. And the first thing I'm going to do is layer on boundaries, which are, in this case, suburbs. It could equally be postcodes or zip codes or your chosen boundary type. So those are the red lines that you see on the map with a label in blue indicating the suburb name. So you can see that they follow streets fairly neatly, and these are going to be our building blocks for a territory. You can see that there are different sizes in this case. This is one of the characteristics of zip codes or suburbs, which are slightly different to statistical areas, which might be more evenly sized. But they're still a useful basis for territory mapping because they are well known and people can readily sort of understand where they are. So apart from the boundaries, if I click on a particular suburb, I can see a demographic profile that's been attached to that suburb. So this is the information that's disseminated from the census agency. So they've summarized for all the households and all the people that live in this suburb. They're going to give us the totals or the averages depending on the measure that we're interested in. So you can see there's the name of the suburb at the top. We've got the total population, so that's all people living in the suburb. And in this example, we've got a couple of age bands. Age 0 to 9, there's the count, the age 15 to 49. Depending on what your product or service or business is targeted at, maybe it's people over age 65 if you're an aged care-based business. Maybe it's people age 0 to 4 if you're in kindergarten. But you can pick and choose which age bands you might include in the map as a basis for your territory mapping. You can further disaggregate that data by sex as well. So, for example, how many males aged between 15 and 49, how many females, and so forth. So this is just a sort of an example that can be expanded upon. We've also got the median age for the suburb. That'll indicate whether there's a slightly younger demographic in that area or a slightly older demographic. That can be a good indicator of the general sort of goings-on in the suburb. And also the total number of households. So if you're providing a service that's targeting households, you want to know a count of those households. Maybe it's a household cleaning service or a lawn care service. Again, we can further disaggregate the data. For example, we might want to know how many detached houses or how many apartments in the area or how many homes that are owned versus rented. So we can dig deeper into the data and pull out the factors that are going to be important to us. We've also got a bit of information here about the territory name and status. So this is indicating that this suburb is part of a territory that's being built. And finally, at the bottom, we've got some income information. So income's available in different ways. Personal income, so that's an individual person's income. The household income, so that's all the working persons in that household. So those are the median incomes. That's the normal measure that's provided. And we can also get the count of people earning over a certain amount. So, for example, if we're providing, let's say, a higher end gym offering, and we want to know how many people with, they're on a disposable income, we can get a count of those people. So you can see there's 2,590 people earning over 104,000 against the total population of 10,000. Of course, that's all age bands, including people under 16 who are not working.
So let's just do a quick recap there, Paul. So we started off with the base map, which is just the map of Sydney. That's that we use the base map, and then on top of that, we layered the suburbs.
Right.
We use a mapping. Well, we use Mango in order to do that, in order to upload that, which overlays onto the base map.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of what you've just discussed, that's the demographic data from the census, correct?
Yeah, that's right. It's just a selection. So, as we discussed previously, there are several hundred demographic factors that are collected, but these are some of the core ones. But don't feel that you're restricted to these only. In fact, if I click on this link at the bottom here, that'll take me to the Bureau of Statistics website, and I can see for that suburb the complete demographic profile with all of the age bands, marital status. There's a whole host of factors available. But certainly, as we discussed previously, keep it focused and add things in rather than throwing in hundreds of factors all at once.
So that's the demographics. We touched upon there. We looked at the suburbs, and then we classified the suburbs in terms of who is living there, the certain incomes, etc. So that's two other types of data. So how do we take it a step further then, and then incorporate points of interest to give a cohesive package, say?
Okay, so that's the demographic profile for a single suburb. Of course, if we click on adjacent suburbs, they have different data. A single suburb or a single zip code is generally not enough for a territory in of itself. So we might want to think about summarizing several areas together, and your mapping solution should support that. For example, if we just want to draw a circle around a couple. Okay, so I have 3 suburbs selected there, and I want to know, what's the total across those 3 suburbs. And you can see there's a population of 23,000, and there are the summary demographics across those 3 suburbs. So that's essentially the start of a territory mapping process to evaluate areas until we meet our targets in either population and or income, and then assign those areas to the territory. And that's essentially how we get going.
Cool. So this is we've touched upon, like I said, the base map, and then you have the suburbs, which is the shapes into the boundary data we called it, and then we have the demographics that go into each boundary. We also talked about points of interest as this third type of data that we incorporate in order to really produce a cohesive territory map and data profile. How do you then take this? So the boundaries and the demographics, and how would you add on points of interest, the final layer of data?
Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously, in all of these areas, there's a lot of things going on. There's residential areas, there's retail areas, there's parks, there's big shopping malls. So we really want to start delving into that. There's probably hundreds and hundreds of businesses, but we want to be a bit sort of systematic in the way that we approach that. So let me give you an example. In this case, let's say we're looking at, we have a Pilates brand, and we're looking at opening new locations or franchising territories where locations will be opened. And so, for example, we can overlay all Pilates studios that are already in existence in a particular area. Those are the blue dots on the map there. So these are potential competitors. If I click on one of those, I can get the information for that particular location, the brand and the address. Or if there's a specific competitor that I'm interested in, let's say the KX Pilates in this case, those are the blue squares. Let's say they're a direct competitor. Their offering appeals to a very similar demographic. We can use that to see where they are, particularly in the context of when we're thinking about opening a location of our own or the franchisee opening. We don't want to be too close to that competitor. maybe we don't get too hung up about all the other ones because there's a lot going on in the city. Maybe our concept is unique and we think it's going to get traction in those areas. But it's certainly useful to have a sense of what's going on in the competitive landscape.
Yeah.
We can also, if we're thinking about siting and where to open, we can bring in things like retail areas. So those are the red patches on the map. Similarly, if we have something that requires a bit more space, maybe we want to look at the light industrial areas. So it's a way for us to think about forming territories so that they include some of these either retail or light industrial areas that the franchisee could set up in. Or if we're getting down to the nitty-gritty of site selection, this is really useful to see what's going on at the local level.
This really brings it to life as well. Once you see it all together on the map, you see the demographics that you can add, you see the points of interest or competitors that you can add, and then you see certain boundaries. And then you can also see how you can merge, say, 3 boundaries into an actual territory, or 4 boundaries or 5, depending on your company. Yes, I think this really gives a great example of how it all comes together and how you use different forms of data in order to produce that cohesive territory mapping package. The next part that we always talk about, and that's actually going to be its own video, and we're going to be talking about that next, is taking what we have here, that once it's all been created, once it's all been formed and put together and the strategy is done, it's really about then taking it to market and being able to present and sell to prospective franchisees.
Yeah, that's right. And let's have a bit of a sneak peek about what we're going to be talking about next, because it ties into what we've just looked at now. What I'm going to show on the map here are finished territories. So these are groups of suburbs. So you can see this Bondi territory up here. If I just click on that, so that's 5 or 6 suburbs that are being grouped together. You can see the population is 82,000 overall. So this is sort of the finished product, and we're going to talk more about this in the next discussion. But let me just give you a sense of what's possible while we're looking at the map. So you can see in a city, particularly if you're just getting going or you're looking to expand, and there's a lot of areas that you haven't established in yet, everything sort of looks the same. Everything can be a bit of a sea of green. But let me give you a sense of how we can use this either to decide which areas to sell first, both in terms of releasing them to prospects or just making them more attractive overall. So let's, using this Pilates example that I showed you before, let's say I want to highlight the territories that are relatively high income and have relatively few existing Pilates studios. Maybe these are going to be the ones that we, offer first. So we can do that on the map here. And let's say I want to look at territories with a median personal income of $40,000 a year and have let's say less than 15 studios. Okay, and you can see there are 25 territories highlighted on the map there that are high income and have relatively few Pilates studios. So we might identify these areas first, put those as tier 1 territories and really attract people to buy into these. So this is just a sort of a sense of how we can use territories to sell. And let's talk about that more in the next talk.
Definitely. We're looking forward to that because we've gone through really step by step in terms of like how do you switching to territories, and then how do you adopt a more data driven approach, and hopefully over the past few videos we've gone through each data set and now we can see it like on the map all rendered together, and I think it really brings it to life. So I think the most important talk is next, is like how do you then take this to market. So I look forward to that one, Paul, and thanks for today, and I will see you in the next video. And to everyone watching, the next video is about how you now take the franchises that you have and take them to market, present to prospective franchisees. So we will see you in that video, and thank you for watching.